Hi everyone, I hope you're all having a good day. I hope you're all keeping well and staying safe. So I'm back here with another video and I will carry on reading for you from my book Mystic Butterfly, A Guide to Your True Self. And I just want to say thank you for all your lovely comments. I'm so glad actually you enjoyed me reading the introduction. And today I will actually read you from chapter 1, which I call Shadow on My Soul. And I'm gonna split this chapter actually to two parts because the chapter is a bit long and I just don't want these videos to be too long. So let me just read you half of it today and I'll do the second half tomorrow. So here we go. Shadow on My Soul. On 9th of December 2006, I was on a flight to Milan on which I was working as cabin crew. The flight itself was ordinary and I had time to relax and chat with a colleague. As we talked, something suddenly changed. The change was subtle at first, a feeling floating into my reality. But before I could think, I felt as if I had been hit hard in my solar plexus. I became weak, shaky, and unable to stand. It felt like all my energy had been sucked out. I wanted to escape, but as I was on a plane, I had nowhere to go. Even if there had been somewhere to go, I didn't have the energy to move. My colleague was still talking, but I wasn't part of that conversation anymore. I was only an observer of what was going on around me, perceiving it with a foggy sensation on my mind. I felt as if I was watching a dream. That dream quickly became an anxious nightmare, and I became more and more fearful. Through the confusion, I tried to understand why I felt as I did, but I couldn't find an explanation. I struggled through the rest of the flight as best as I could. Once we had landed, I left the aircraft still feeling very weak and gave myself the time I needed to think about what had happened. I wondered if I had just been a little tired and stressed. I thought that perhaps I had my first panic attack. At that point, all I wanted was to sleep, wake feeling refreshed, and forget about the whole thing. Forgetting wasn't an option. The panic attack on the plane was the start of a long period of unease and discomfort that lasted over 4 years. That attack on the plane was the first signal I had from my soul that something in my life needed to change. I had a painful and difficult road ahead of me, but I understood for the first time that I needed to explore myself, my reasons for being, and the purpose of my life's journey. A process of change is not always full of light and hope. Every day became challenging. Every day was filled with fear, anxiety, and worry. I was constantly questioning where and how could I survive this storm. I was young, in my early 20s, and watching my friends filling their lives with parties and holidays. I couldn't join them. Every morning, I asked myself the same question. How will I get through today? These were dark days, lived in a shadow that had cast itself on my soul. It began in childhood. As a child, I had a rich inner life and a vivid imagination. I was artistic and creative, spending my time writing music, stories, and poetry. I would often spend many hours composing at a piano. And even from a very early age, I had a vision that I would one day share my work with the world, sparking passion and conversation. While I haven't become the famous composer and a singer I once dreamed of being, I have continued to be creative and imaginative. This has shaped my world. Like many creative children, I was introverted and kept most of my thoughts and feelings to myself. I spent loads of time thinking and analyzing, and was seen by adults as being old for my years. Partly because I didn't have many friends, I looked inward to the point of exhaustion. I was strongly affected by criticism and turned this inward too. Even today, the exact words of the adults in my childhood life, my teachers and my parents, echo in my subconscious. While I was able to understand and appreciate I was a quiet and creative little soul, I didn't understand the strength of my intuition, the whispering internal voice that gives us warning messages and signals about the things that are yet to happen. I could hear this voice often as a child, and at first it scared me. I would have a clear understanding that something was about to happen just before it did. As I got used to it, I grew to accept it. Now, I understand that this voice is the link between my conscious mind and my soul. I also know that everyone has this voice, but some people have not yet learned to hear it, or they simply dismiss it. As a child, I spoke to my parents about this voice, my intuition. I wasn't to worry about it. I was just experiencing some coincidences, they said. They couldn't have done anything else, as they only understood the world from their own level of perception, which was different from mine. But this disconnection between my own view of the world and everyone else I mentioned it to meant that I labeled myself as the weird kid. My intuition led me to the realization that there must be something higher in the world than that which we can see. While some people believe that it is obvious that when we die it will be the end of our existence, it was equally obvious to me that this couldn't be the case. It was a concept I could not accept, because my daily lived experience told me otherwise. The intuition I had that guided and protected me every day was ever present and seemed to me to be a clear sign that something existed beyond my immediate physical reality. I would experience constant synchronicities between things that my intuition told me and things that happened to me and around me. Where does intuition come from? I wasn't sure exactly, but I knew that it meant that there must be a life beyond my physical limits. In my darker moments, I wanted to reject this belief and become more normal. After a while, I learned to live with my difference and to keep quiet about it. As I grew older, I became influenced more and more by my five senses and the physical world. It was, I believe, time to escape my inner world and experience real life as others did. Other people seemed to move so easily through the world, happy in the immediate present, untroubled by thoughts of what might lie beyond it. I wanted to live easily as they did, and I began to ignore the intuitive inner voice that I used to hear so clearly. I doubted it, and I nearly shut it down completely. I stopped believing that there was anything beyond physical and set out to live as a normal adult in the real life that others seem to prize so highly. Real life was not as easy to navigate as I had assumed it would be. By trying to join the crowd, I started feeling uneasy and unbalanced. I had learned the rules, but living by them was difficult, even painful. I spent a lot of time trying to please others, hoping that by doing so they would like and accept me. It was a disappointing and tiring process, as I worked hard to be accepted by people whose truth didn't resonate with my own. I felt lost, and for a long time I didn't understand why. Then I boarded that flight to Milan. By the end of that flight, something had changed. I didn't yet know what, but I did understand that I couldn't continue as I had been. It was time to address my fears and search for the way home. The explosive force of what happened on that flight blew all my blocked emotions out of my core and up to my consciousness. All the fear, resentment, and denial that I had been living with for years was suddenly and sharply present. From my introverted childhood and my teenage attempts to prove I was good enough, to my young adult desire to be accepted, they were all there, asking to be dealt with. It was time to understand and make peace with myself. Then I would be able to start living authentically. As I set to the task I couldn't ignore, some ugly truths reared their heads. I realized that I've been living an unhealthy lifestyle with bad choices that were putting stress on my body and in turn blocking my soul's voice. I've been constantly worrying about others' opinion, criticizing myself, and making myself fragile. I've been expending much of my time and energy on overanalyzing and negative thoughts. I've never made the time to tell myself, as the most important person in my own life, that I loved myself. Though I was having those realizations, my energy was so sapped that I struggled to see a way through. I felt I would need a miracle. I found that I was often led to my thoughts of my childhood and of all the unanswered questions that had been in my subconscious for all these years. At first, I didn't understand why my childhood experience was so important, but slowly I began to see that my childhood self had been my true self. By ignoring and stamping down that self, I've become detached from my soul. I began to think about the strong intuitive knowings and premonitions I'd had as a child. In remembering them, I remembered who I really was. I understood why I've spent years feeling lifeless and numb. My physical self wasn't enough. I needed to be more connected to my soul. Without it, I wasn't whole. Together, my body and my soul were my being, and one could not function without the other. The numbness I felt had been a clear signal from my soul that it needed to be looked after. I knew I would ignore that signal for much too long. The realization was liberating, allowing me to begin to uncover my hidden truths. The process of doing so would be fraught with pain and anxiety, but I understood that it was a necessary process. I was not a victim. Those days might have been dark, but I would not take back any one of them. Indeed, I am grateful for them, for they helped me to align with my own truth. So that's the first part of chapter 1, Shadow of My Soul. So I hope you enjoyed it, and I will do the second part for you tomorrow. Have a lovely evening. Bye.